Well, hello, everyone. My name is Don Sutherland, and I am a co-convener of the Living Incomes for Everyone campaign. And I'm delighted to welcome you all to this tutorial about the cashless welfare cards. And the first thing I would like to do is acknowledge that I, Don Sutherland, am sitting on the land of the Wurundjeri people and coming to you from their country. And I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And in doing so, also assert that I understand, as do many others, that they have never ceded their country and they look forward to everything that is possible so that they can develop much greater control over their country in the future. The Living Incomes for Everyone campaign, for those of you who are not yet familiar with it, was formed around just over a year ago. And we did so for two reasons. Firstly, in the context of the emerging pandemic around COVID, we felt that obviously the government could not be relied upon to really care for the situation that was facing low-income people. And in particular, we agreed that that would include low-income people who are on industrial wages as we understand them. And so we put the campaign together in order to build much greater solidarity between all of the different organisations, both welfare-type organisations, pensioner organisations and unions, of course, and many other organisations that were waging a great struggle on behalf of their constituents to ensure a better deal. We came to the conclusion that it was important that we develop much greater solidarity and try and challenge the tendency at the time towards what we called silo campaigning, in which organisations were very effective in pursuing their agendas and having trouble connecting up with all sorts of other organisations who shared much in common. So the Living Incomes for Everyone campaign came together on that basis, trying to help organisations build solidarity that would eventually grow a much bigger people's movement. Tonight, we have run a number of projects over the last 12 months. Tonight's project is a slightly different one. It is going to be a tutorial about cashless welfare debit cards. And it's hopefully going to be the first in a series, depending on how we go. And we will very much look forward to your feedback about how we might improve the effort based upon tonight's experience. We are very lucky in this tutorial. It'll be in the form of a Q&A, a question and answer session, in which you and the audience can also ask questions at various points through the next hour or so. But we're very lucky, and this is the point at which I would very much like to introduce our two main guests who will address the issues that are put in front of them through questions and through comments, no doubt. Firstly, we have Kathryn Wilkes, who is the convener, if I can use that phrase, of the No Cashless Welfare Debit Card group, which is very prominent on Facebook with thousands of followers. And Kathryn is going to be one of the two main speakers during tonight's tutorial. The second is Amanda Smith, and Amanda works in close working relationship with Kathryn, and she is an expert on the card, mainly from the point of view of research and things that are associated with research. And she is going to be answering some of your questions as well. And Amanda comes from the Sane 07 group based here in Melbourne. So with that, I'd like to make a start on of getting underway and ask in the very first instance, just before they start answering questions, if Amanda would like to say anything quickly about Sane 07, and then Kathryn to do the same thing very quickly, and then we can proceed to the first set of questions, which will come from me. And then after that, I'll ask for those of you in the audience to indicate whether you'd like to ask a question.
Evening, everybody. The Say No 7 was called the Say No 7 because a Liberal Party member decided to call us 7 Say No rat bags one day. That's how we got our name. We were all 7 women who decided to fight the card just over 6 years ago. We do, for the Say No 7, we do policy analysis and research. We provide information to media, other writers, bloggers, and people regarding the card from a cardholder perspective and from a policy perspective, whole of view, whereas and our affiliation has been since the beginning with the No Cashless Debit Card Australia group. So that's us in a nutshell.
Thank you. And Kathryn, your turn.
Okay, so I started No Cashless Debit Card Australia 6 years ago, and yes, we were being heavily trolled by LNP at the time, and that's where I met Amanda and became part of the Say No 7 as well. And so we've teamed up, and I've concentrated on the last 3 years. When the card came to the region I was living in, I had to make a decision, were we online or whether we were on the ground. And we went on the ground, and I assist with card holders, trying to get them information, direct them to the senators and try and help them get off the card, which we got quite a few people off. We've done a lot of protests. We've been to the Senate. I've spoken at 4 Senate inquiries. We've done petitions, media, television, the works. We're just not going to shut up no matter what they say. Because that's what they've tried to do in my region quite a lot, is shut me up, and it hasn't worked. I've been stalked and surveilled and trolled, and I'm not going to shut up.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Kathryn. And I'm sure everyone in the audience are going to learn just what outstanding champions of the people Kathryn and Amanda truly are. So let's get started. The first set of questions are really going to be about the card and its mechanics. So just starting off, what is the Cashless Welfare Debit Card, and who is it that is subjected to it? I think it's over to Amanda.
Over to myself. Okay, I'm just going to bring up a file to share, and I'll be sharing my screen. You've disabled screen sharing, Don. First of all, I would like just to say I'm on Wurundjeri territory as well, home of the Kulin Nations, and I'd also like to put out a special shout out for card holders in the room tonight who are listening in. I have the cold, so you'll have to bear with me. The Cashless Debit Card is a piece of plastic. The policy behind the Cashless Debit Card is a program of compulsory third-party income management. And this is the disconnect that a lot of people get. The cashless card itself isn't cashless. You get 20% of your income to your personal account. You get 80% quarantined by third parties, which is then managed for you. In this case, the third parties are the government and a private corporation called Inju Limited. Inju Limited are not bound by Senate estimates. They're not required to appear before any Senate committees. And as we found out in estimates just a couple of weeks ago, there is no oversight on their profiteering or any regulation on their profiteering for this card. Compulsory income management means that somebody else quite literally takes control over your spending choices and decision makings. While you're free to spend your 20%, which I should add is as low as $3 a day for a person on youth allowance, as high as $11 a day for a person on DSP, your 80% is managed. It is put into categories in the Inju account, and you have to ask permission to change sums within those categories or to withdraw extra money to your private account. Cardholders are allowed to, or some cardholders are allowed to withdraw $200 a month extra to their private accounts. But we have noticed the racial discrimination inherent to that, in that white cardholders from Hervey Bay have a much easier time of that, whereas in Ceduna and Kununurra, predominantly Aboriginal populations, they're not getting access to that extra $200 a month.
Sit down,
sorry. I do have a screen to share, but it's still, I'm not able to share it. It is the payments that are on the cards now. let's just, for the purposes of ease tonight, let's just say age pension and service pensions are only on the card in Cape York at this time, but they are on the card. Every other payment excepting DVA, which is Department of Veterans Affairs pensions, is on the card. And it's not just your primary payment, like a disability allowance or a parenting payment. It is all the sundries that go with that, which are called restrictable payments. And they include pensioner education supplement, bereavement payments, advance payments. These all go 100% on the card. I will make my slides available underneath in the chat after we're done tonight. But the trigger payment list includes OS study, AB study, parenting payment, bereavement allowance, carer payment, disability pension, job seeker, parenting payments and parenting allowances, sickness allowance, special benefit, widows and youth allowance. These are the primary trigger payments. If you are on one of those and a rollout comes to your town, you're on the card.
Okay.
I need to be clear that family tax benefit is also a restrictable payment. And in Australia at the moment, 67% of families in the country are on that trigger payment, are on that restrictable payment or receive it.
Good. Thank you very much, Amanda. Which can then take us naturally on to the next question. How long has the card been around and how did it get started?
It's been around since, well, it started officially in 2016 in Ceduna and Kununurra. It is, I suppose you'd call it the cash, basics card on steroids. And initially it was sold as for people on the then New Star, and it was supposed to be targeted to certain people within the community. That's how it was sold to the community of Ceduna. They were lied to. When it rolled into town, it went to everybody from age 17 to 67, all payments across the board, including disability and carers. And it got started in 2016. It was supposed to be a 1-year trial. Well, we've seen where that's gone. It's spread like a cancer, and now 15,000 plus people are on it. And if they get their way with the NT, you'll have another 23,000 people added to it if they can convince them to volunteer transition to the cashless debit card from their basics cards. So yeah, that's where it started.
What is the law that it operates under? How does it work?
Okay, well, the Cashless Card Trial Act was the 2015 legislation that committed the card to policy. How it works is by inverting onus of burden of proof and assuming that all people that are placed onto the program are drinkers, have behavioural social problems. We know in reality that that's not true, and there is actually no assessment process involved. How it works on the ground is one day, if you're in a trial region, a card shows up in your mailbox. Your payment is already split into 80-20 by the time you get that card. As far as the law is concerned, we have several issues there, which we have trouble within the time frame going into. The most important of which are the rights and protections, which I'll just add to chat now. Which is a gift that will inform you that how many rights, and under the law, quite literally, your natural human rights, your citizenship is basically second tiered. You are no longer able to access social security law in regards to your protection of payment, your statutory right to not incriminate yourself, and guardian and fiduciary rights that you would normally have as a normal Centrelink recipient or a normal citizen don't apply. They quite literally taking over management of your life and, in the legislation, your personal affairs. So it is a definite capacity statement that they're making when you're put on the card. It's not just about financial services. It's about your capacity as a person under law. The privacy legislation issues here are all contained within it, within the initial documentation. On-sell data and on-sell other information to 6 countries that we know of, and that is acceptable and justified under the Act. Human rights limitations your human rights are infringed upon and they are limited while you're on the program. And again, due to the justifications in the legislation itself, this is acceptable legislative segregation. You are quite literally segregated economically and socially, from all other citizens in Australia. You come under a different set of rules and a different set of laws. And as we mentioned before, profiteering is also left unchecked. Briefly putting it into a 30-second answer, that's as best as I can do, Don. If anyone wants more information on how this process works, please ask us after the
Got one more question before we will ask those of you who are joining in the audience whether you'd like to ask a question. Questions should be limited to around 30 seconds to a minute at the most. And the first set of questions ought to be about the mechanics of the card, the sort of subject matter that Amanda and Kathryn have been talking about so far. So the next question is really for Kathryn, and is if you could describe for us, Kathryn, the impact on the day-to-day lives of these cards.
Okay, so for somebody who's initially, when they first get their card, they get quite shocked. It impacts them in across so many ways. So health-wise, it affects your mental health. It causes stress, leading to people going to their doctors, getting a mental health plan, being put on medications for depression, anxiety, and they recluse themselves anyway naturally once they've dealt with the failure of the cards in public and had to put up with, in the beginning up here, some very horrible judgmental comments from people standing behind them at checkouts. And then not being able to get into community events because the money's on the card and the kids can't take part, so that upsets kids. So parents withdraw to, in the Hinkler region, you can actually do online shopping with Coles. So I know quite a few families that don't go shopping anymore. They do the online stuff to save any embarrassment and any more shame that they've copped in the past. With the health issues, it can go further as well. We did have a young mum who was an at-risk pregnancy when she got her card, and even her doctors were trying to advise Indu to, no, don't do this, it's going to affect her pregnancy. And of course, Indu staff laughed at her and said, oh, no, it's not going to cause you any problems. Well, it did. She ended up going to hospital with a preemie birth. And then she had the indignity with a hospital social worker trying to sort out a preemie baby and trying to activate a cashless debit card with the hospital social worker and the social worker from Indu. Right, and it's been shown in other regions that you get lower birth weights in pregnancy, higher mortality rates in utero, and some of the other physical health impacts. I've seen it with my friends that are on the card here. Right, one in particular, 33-year-old Jodie, she had a heart attack, and the damage done has left her with 3 leaking heart valves. Of course, nobody's going to take and put their hand up and say sorry. She's been diagnosed with a condition called broken heart syndrome, which is caused by stress. It's a very real issue. So people are dealing with the mental stress, the physical stress, right? And they also have to deal with in the community, because of the media ramp up of welfare bludgers and stuff like that. There's always the problem when the card fails, all eyes are on you. Do you know what I mean? And that is very intimidating for a lot of people. But it also causes problems at school with the kids, because when the kids can't participate or they can't get access to secondhand school uniforms and they can't go on excursions, right? We've had kids that one of the families I know, all of her kids were in counselling. And when you get 7-year-olds come home and say, are we poor because they're excluded, it has an effect on the whole family. But then it has an effect on the extended family, because then for those that do have extended family, and you know, grandma jumps in and is buying stuff for the grandchild to try and, or giving money to the mum to try and prop them up all the time, because rent failures, can't pay car loans. And I've had people in my lounge room broken, in tears, shaking, that just don't know what to do. They couldn't pay their rent, they were being evicted, 3 kids not sure what to do. You know what I mean? It's breaking people. And this is the most inhumane policy, and they just will not listen or acknowledge any of the human impacts on the card at all.
So thanks very much, Kathryn. Yes, I've been saddened by some of the stories I've learned from Kathryn in particular about what this card is doing to the daily lives of low incomes people. We have two questions about the mechanics of the card, how it works. So Scott Kitchener, could you ask your question? It's about Indu, I believe.
Yeah, g'day. Can everyone see and hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, really. Yeah, so I remember when this this cashless welfare card first rolled out, it was run by Twiggy Forrester. I'm not sure if that's still correct. And he may be still making millions of dollars off this welfare card. I'm not too sure if that's still the case. And also, I was under the impression that the cost of issuing and administrating the card was more expensive than what people were receiving in welfare payments. So kind of, the cost of welfare has gone up in this country, and it's actually harming people while it's rewarding people at the top, like Twiggy, who might have a vested interest.
Thanks, Scott.
I think I can answer that one. Just the first part last. The last formal notification we received in Parliament was that the card is costing $12,000 per person to initiate. That is a cumulative total cost of the announced spending. It is not a yearly sum. The yearly sum works out to around, we assume, $900 to $1,000 per participant. But going by the last Senate estimates, this year, 19 and 20 alone, it cost over $6,500 per participant. We do have all the data and the estimates figures, but those three sums that the senators admitted to in Senate estimates are not evidence of the cumulative cost of that year's spending on CDC. Only the contractual obligations that department were required to provide. All spending charges, and costs of the CDC are now not for publication. The government has made it secret. Sorry, I'm really got this flu. Regarding Andrew Forrest, Andrew Forrest is a multi-billionaire. He doesn't need our money, and it's never been about money for Andrew Forrest. It has been about control. And when you see that he has a senator, a former employee of Minderoo, is now sitting in the Senate, you understand what I mean by about power and control. I have met at a Senate hearing, Senator O'Sullivan, and he has, and he's entitled to his view as any member of Parliament is. But yeah, to have somebody from Andrew Forrest's own network sitting in the Senate and having him and Minderoo continue to push, say, for people like Jacinta Price to be entering into federal politics is a great concern, because this is where the power and the power play and control of private corporate interest over government policies comes into play. And that's our biggest concern. He doesn't need the money. He does need the power and control over our government, which Minderoo, being Australia's very own little Serco at the moment, especially out west, it is a problem for us. And we find that a significant problem. But Andrew himself and the Liberal Party are not shareholders in Indu. I have to say this out loud. I have the list. I know who the shareholders are. And if you are a member of ACOBA, which is the Customer-Owned Banking Association in Australia, then you are very likely a shareholder and participant owner of Indu Limited. Thanks, Don.
We're going to move on, move the content on a little bit, and in a sense, it's this next question is being posed by 3 or 4 people in the chat. It really comes down to this: what are the arguments that the government is currently using to justify the card?
You want to have a go at that first, Kathryn?
I'll have a go at it. We've heard every fairy tale under the sun so far. Initially, it was supposed to be to reduce social harms within the community in regards to alcohol, drug and gambling issues. However, then it moved on to, we had Twiggy Forrest in the media on the ABC at one stage saying that it would stop men from being pedophiles, which really raised an outlaw, right? Then we had Anne Ruston saying that it's a literacy tool. However, all I see is bankruptcies, broken credit ratings and damaged rental histories and evictions. I don't call that a good literacy tool, right? Then it's supposed to encourage welfare recipients to get off welfare,
Punishment.
right? But it can't create any jobs except for those that, you know, get the contracts like impact employment agencies and stuff like that. Then it's good contracts for those people, but not for the average Joe that's out here trying to get a job. So basically, I've heard from Kununurra, one of the staunchest supporters of one of the First Nations people. He was saying that basically it's to bring about total behavioural change, right? So basically,
Yeah, I'd
change.
like to add to that. Yeah. In the justifications in the legislation is to reduce social harms and reduce the amount of money being spent, welfare money they call it, being spent on alcohol and drugs. Every evaluation to date has shown that that's not happened. In fact, the minuscule amounts, 85.4% of people have had no positive impact after 6 years. The very limited amount of change that has happened has been attributed to alcohol bans and other forms of suppression of alcohol purchases in communities, and even communities themselves are saying that. It's noteworthy to say that Ceduna Drug and Alcohol Centre have also come out and said the card hasn't worked to solve any of the problems that they had. So it's not just us saying these things, it's the government's own evaluation. But we have been, you know, we've been called pedophile supporters, we've been called crime supporters. People have to understand that people who have jobs, people in paid employment, are on the card right now. This is not something that only impacts Aboriginal people, who make up just 40%, not just, sorry, forgive me for that. They make up 40% of people on cashless debit cards right now. It doesn't just affect single mums, who do make up a larger proportion of people on the cards. It affects everybody across the board. We have a working mother who gets $15 a fortnight, who is on the card, a full-time working mother, you know, who is on the card. So we really need to have that understood by people. This card is a blanket approach. There is no assessment of your condition done. All right, so when they say a justification like financial tools, if somebody is given like $40 a day to live on, even the experts have come out, financial experts, and said that amount of income is not enough to run a budget. It's not enough to create a budget, let alone to plan and to save or to do anything else. There's this kind of thinking is an ideological perspective, and it's a neoliberal ideological perspective, and as many people know, a religious perspective on poverty, a particular religious perspective. And I'll keep it to that. Sorry.
So, Colin, if you could ask your question, please. Unmute, mate.
Yeah. How's that?
Yeah, good.
Thank you. There's been some pretty strong statements coming out from the federal government recently about they have no intention of spreading the Indue card to pensioners and other areas. However, Minister Ruston has made a public statement, I think in Parliament, saying that pensions are welfare for people who can't look after themselves. That's his statement. And I understand it's been supported also by Morrison. Making that connection and reducing the pension to status of welfare would then seem to open the gate to introducing these sorts of things, the Indue card, to other groups of people. Do you have any comment on that, Amanda?
Yes, I'm probably not going to find a big audience for this, but age pension hasn't been a protected payment since 1986, when the end of the National Welfare Fund and all the money in that was returned to the consolidated revenue. It's paid from the same consolidated revenue that every payment is paid, and it's paid through Centrelink system. So therefore it is considered already a welfare payment. We understand that there was the 7% tax and all of this other stuff is going on, but from where we stand today, that's the basis we have to operate from, is that age pension is already a welfare payment. Now, all I can say to you is that when I called Anne Ruston specifically to mention the fact that the age pension is listed as a restrictable payment in the legislation, she refused to rule out that age pension would be included. Now, a lot of the statements that are going on between the Labor and the Liberal at the moment forget to actually mention the fact that age pensioners are already on the card. Not just people up to 67 years of age, which used to be the old pension age, by the way, but you've actually got people in Cape York right now who are on age pension, or who, from not having a birth certificate, can't get age pension, so they're on carers or job seeker or disability, who are actually on cards right now. So the question of when the government is going to put pensioners on the card is already resolved. They're already on it right now. The question is, will they expand that to include more? Now, you can trust the Liberal Party if you like. Sorry, we can't, okay? And there's a really good reason for that, and I will post it. This is part of a submission that I made. Okay, right now, the age pension is a restrictable payment. For the first time in the whole legislation history since 2015, it's actually made it from voluntary to restrictable payment. So it's actually made that leap in the legislation already. Now, there's a caveat in place for the Northern Territory, which means age pensioners won't go on the card there unless there's another bill or a special legislative instrument, they call it, is used to include them there. But if they had no intention of rolling it out further, then it wouldn't have been a restrictable payment. There would have been a caveat in the special region of the Families Responsibility Commission region of Cape York. There would have just been a special caveat that allowed them to include age pension there, while the rest of the document would have just had it as a voluntary payment still. And we already know on the ground in the Goldfields and in Hinkler, they are pushing for age pensioners to go on. And we also had the comment from, was it Gillespie's office? A staffer from Gillespie's office a couple of weeks ago let slip that the promotion of the card to the age community will be based on your safety. They don't mention why people are unsafe in their communities at all, but it will be, and we know that that promotion is sound because that's already being used in the card rollout sites right now to encourage age pensioners to sign up. You know, so we know
some other questions that we might like to get to, yep. Please, Amanda. There's a question. There's a couple of questions actually about the extended rollout. Phil Bradley, if you'd like to ask yours, it will cover off on a couple of the other questions as well.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Sorry, I was a bit late, but I'm wondering how far they've progressed in New South Wales in particular in terms of pressuring people to join, in particular Western Sydney Aboriginal communities and other struggling communities in Western Sydney. I know there was a trial in Bankstown that I think it was mostly the CPSU and the PSA had some good effect in slowing the whole process up. And my other comment was about involvement of the unions, because we need as many of them engaged as possible, including teachers, because of the impact on children.
Yeah, good stuff. So go for it, Amanda or Kathryn.
Okay. The card you're speaking of that's already in use in Bankstown is the Basics card. Okay, a very different policy and a government-run policy. Indu provides the cards for the Basics card, but they're not actually involved in income management. And people on Basics cards don't lose access to their citizenship rights and their legal rights and protections the way people on Indu cards do. So it's a different card, but because they are on income management, under the legislation just passed, they could be put on the Indu new card or required to be, transferred across. The situation of the special caveat for the Northern Territory has been that people on the card in the Northern Territory can choose to transfer from basics to the CDC, but that's the only choice. Basics and CDC are both mandatory compulsory income management programs. So the only choice is to transfer. I don't know, there's nothing in the legislation whether or not people in Shepparton and Victoria here or in South Australia and Playford and Elizabeth and places will be given the right, as Aboriginal communities are in the Northern Territory, to make that choice. There was no specification for other basics card users around the country. This was the last bill to pass was very much focused on the Northern Territory rollout. Somebody has asked about those rollouts and, it's been in all the press. The National and the Liberal Party have already voted internally to roll this program out and to do so incrementally.
New South Wales soon,
across Australia, starting with all people. What was it, Kathryn? All under 36s on job seeker and youth allowance.
Possibly parenting payments.
Possibly parenting payment as well. So the national rollout is impending. If NLP are re-elected, it's a done fact.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is from Danny. I think the pensioners one has been covered off, Danny, but you've got another question which is about this subject of developing the campaign. So Danny Mutton, please.
Yeah, I guess the only other question I've got about pensioners is how are they trying to put pressure on pensioners to go on the card? Secondly, in relation to the bank actions that are coming up in September, my question is, have the people organising the actions spoken to the finance sector union, who is a union that covers, I guess, workers who work in the major banks, because obviously you might be able to get some solidarity with them prior to the actions happening. I guess from a union point of view, it's always good for the members to know why there's protests outside of their workplace. So probably engaging the finance sector union might be a good idea, and I'm not sure, you might have already had some steps to do that prior to the action.
Okay, the September actions were just a decision made by our admins and moderators group only a couple of weeks ago, so we haven't had much of a chance to do the reaching out, but that is a really good idea and we'll take that and run with it. Regarding, I think I spoke about the pressures already being put on age pensioners now to sign up for their safety. So, and that is the biggest pressure that's being put on at the moment. A lot of it too, in some cases, it's warranted in the sense that people with cash are now becoming targets of assault, but that does not single out the age community as a sole source of that focus in communities. Crime in all trial regions has risen as a result of the card. But yeah, the actions in September, we've only just started forming this group, so please do join up, bring your ideas. The group is delineated by states, so grab your local state and go with it. And but as far as administrating that event goes, we'll definitely approach the union. Thank you. Well, CPSU, I'd like to say thank you very much for all your support for the last 6 years. So we do have a lot of union support already, but it's small.
Thank you very much. Perhaps we could just move on to a question once again that has come up from several people in the audience, and that is about the response of the major political parties who are in opposition. What sort of a reaction, what is the nature of their reaction to your campaign? Kathryn, would you like to lead off?
Well, all the way along, we've had the support of state ALP, and all the way along, we've had the support of the Greens continuously, right? The Greens have been vehemently opposed to the card all the way through. We had to sort of in the beginning, ALP was supporting the trials, but then the day that I handed Bill Shorten the terms and conditions that were given to card holders, when his policy advisor went through it, they backed out of supporting the trials, and then they started voting against the card since 2017. And now they've become very public against the card, and they've stepped up and said that they will scrap it if they're elected. So I know that they support our campaign, but they've got their way of doing things, and we sit in the middle, non-political. Do you know what I mean? we'll just see how that progresses. At the moment, Justine Elliott has stuck her head up, and they've got this 10-person cabinet meeting thing that they've built, and we'll see where that goes. I'm expecting a meeting with them about it anyway in the near future, but I think with the COVID lockdowns and everything, that's getting in the way a little bit, but we'll get there. So yeah, we've got Greens that are totally against it, ALP saying that they will scrap it, and then you'd have to just be very careful with your independence. That's all I can say. You know what I mean?
I just speak to that independence. Andrew Wilkie has been vehemently opposed since the outset, and has been a wonderful support. Helen Hayes has also spoken out in Parliament several times against the card. You know, and we've also had Senator Rachel Seward and Senator Sue Lyons, who have actually been hands-on with card holders on the ground, non-stop since the beginning. That support has been invaluable, and the consistency of their messaging, their willingness to stand up in Parliament and call out the lies that are being told there, has been, you know, one of the things that has given us a lot of faith and hope for change. ALP's bipartisanship was withdrawn only in 2017, but consistently along the way, we have watched their evolutionary process go, you know, and we've been a part of that informing process. There are no saints in politics. We're not naive and we're not stupid, but ALP's position on the card, we absolutely and thoroughly support. Just to smash this card, to end compulsory income management in Australia is the goal of everyone working in our field. I mean, it is the goal, and they've just come out and said that's what they're going to do. In order to pass this election, One Nation do support the card, Danielle. Unfortunately, they have voted for it every single time. And the last debate, Pauline Hanson actually stood up and said that welfare recipients have no legal rights. So we have tried to inform Ms. Hanson.
There's also questions along the same line about Jackie Lambie and
Jackie Lambie voted for the card initially, and she has a very strong tie in relationship to Andrew Forrest and Matthew O'Sullivan that we're not comfortable with. She voted against the bill this time because the NLP didn't provide all the things that they were supposed to provide along with the program when it rolled out, and she was able to see the correlations between the abandonment of people on cards in basics cards regions to what was happening again under Indue cards. So there's hope there. Trust, another question altogether, but there's hope there. Andrew Wilkie and Helen Hayes, on the other hand, we have no compulsions trusting them. There's also the Australian Workers' Party, Australian Progressives. The New Liberal Party, we're on the fence with, because we don't know enough about them and in practice in Parliament.
And Sterling Griff?
Sterling Griff. The least said about that man, the better.
There's a question from
Centre
Janine
Alliance actually were the key to this bill passing. If not for Centre Alliance, we would have no CDC in Australia today. Sterling Griff left the building on vote night rather than be seen to be supporting the Liberal vote. Rebecca Sharkey blocked amendments in the House of Representatives that would have seen the card be blocked there, and Sterling Griff voted with the NLP on the night. For the last two bills now, Tim Storer and Centre Alliance have both been the single vote deciding it. This program has never passed on merit, not once since 2015, not on evidence, not once since 2015. It has only ever passed on the basis of backroom deals, and that is really important to know. All the evidence supports us, supports the card holders, which we see tonight. And I just again like to mention that they're in the room. Okay, these aren't people that are over there or out there. You have two card holders at least sitting in the room tonight. And for their bravery, we exist to amplify their voices. That's what we do.
We'll come back to that in a moment to wrap up. Janine's going to ask a question which will take us towards the wrap up. And there'll be a couple of questions to help with that wrap up as well. Okay, thanks, Janine.
Thank you, Don. My question is that it's such a rort. The National Integrity Commission that has been called for needs to look at it. And with it's so much like the robo-debt in persecution of, the innocent, the mental health. So I'm just asking you, can it be exposed for the corruption level that is in the background?
Okay, that's actually going to take a federal inquiry to do. A High Court challenge must come, we have a legal advice, must come from within the ministry itself. We've explored all of our legal options, but because there are 3 different exemptions from the law that INGU have. They're an untouchable entity. Cardholders have no access to sue them and very little, except for maladministration legislation in each state, to sue the government at all for any costs. So change will have to come from within the parliament. Definitely through a federal ICAC, the relationship between the National Party and this card and how this card was implemented and the nature of contracts and the financial situations will come out. And I'm very pleased to say that's exactly what Anthony Albanese has suggested will happen under a Labor government. So whether you like Labor or not, if you don't want this card, we're stuck with the 1-2 ALP Greens in our position. And from our perspective, ALP primary vote is the most important vote that we can do this election. We can have our idealistic what for, wish for government any time after that, but to stop this policy, to get to the bottom of it and to bring it out into the open like robo-debt was bought, we're going to need to elect a new government. There's no other choice. For us,
now, in the
no
end,
other choice.
to go to the final couple of minutes, and I do want to say something very briefly about the Life campaign itself after that. But to finish up, both of your organisations have endorsed the demands of the Life campaign, living incomes for everyone. What can other Life campaign endorsing organisations and individuals and other organisations do to make your campaign stronger in the next 3 or 4 months as you head in towards September?
I'll go quickly and then pass that one to Kathryn. The first thing that you can do is join our pages and share our posts. That's how we get the information out. That's how we filter it out to everybody else. Organisations like ACOS can make cashless debit card a priority. We understand, absolutely understand the need for the raise the rate, and we are not discounting that at all. But this is the priority, because if this government is re-elected, all right, this will be the priority. Raise the rate, still with 80% of your income going on the card, you will find yourself, life is very different. So absolutely, Danielle, Green's balance of power is exactly what we want. We want a minority, the perfect thing would be minority government with a strong independent Senate and a House full of progressive MPs. That would be a dream if it happened. But the reality is we need you to join our pages. We need you to join up, and we need to see if your volunteers can also volunteer for us for that one day in September, okay? And I'll pass the rest to Kathryn. What do you think, Kath?
Yeah, the same. If you can join us, if you can hop onto No Cashless Debit Card Australia Facebook page, scroll down, you'll find the link there for the group. If you can help chip in, buy a shirt or whatever, right? Because I'm on a disability support pension, and yeah, I can't afford to do everything myself. If you can help that way as well, because everything costs money to do things, but I'm working towards September. Let's say I've got some props to make that I want to be able to send around the country. I'm not going to give too much away yet because we haven't set it in stone as yet. So whatever way you can help. And even if you can't, even if you just want some flyers, we can send you the PDF and you can go out in your community and give out flyers to people. We have people that randomly pop up at train stations in Brisbane, or one of our members goes all the time out of the blue and stands outside our MP members' offices and sends us a photo of her lovely middle finger. You know what I mean? That's her protest. She's autistic. She loves doing that. You know, that's her little thing.
We have that famous finger has gotten so much awareness raised about the program and what the cost is, but also reveal politicians. It's revealed who's really voting for this. It's like Julia Banks is a big thing at the moment. So I'm on Twitter going, hang on a second, you know, all the women that have been impacted by her voting choices also have a right to be, you know, considered. But
another thing you can
our
do.
Our petition, I've just posted it to the chat. Please sign our petition.
Well,
it sounds really pathetic, but please
so the petition is in the chat. Please download it to your own computers.
Yeah, it is petition EN2799 on the e-petitions page.
E-petition means it's a Parliament of Australia petition.
Yes, and if they don't give us any joy on this petition, we have routes through the AAT, okay, and we have routes through the Commonwealth Ombudsman to make sure that the petition is taken consideration of. So it's really important we get as many signatures as possible.
Now, we are a little bit over time. We've just got two little things to do before we finish up. Firstly, just a little bit of information about the Life campaign for those of you who are not yet familiar with it. Firstly, here are some details about our email. If you wish to send us any feedback about tonight's tutorial, then please do so, including anything that is critical, because that's how we learn to do this sort of thing better than we're currently doing it. You have also there our web address and how to sign on to the newsletter. We put out a newsletter every now and again, which contains information about specific organisations. 82 of them have endorsed the Life campaign so far, all sorts of organisations, and then also the activities, particularly of those organisations that are combining together in solidarity to support each other in pursuing their demands. And our statement of demands, just to reinforce, includes section 3, which I've highlighted there, which is to end, we must fight for a system that ends the harassment of people on low incomes and who need social security, but with dignity. So that's it for now about the Life campaign. I want to finish off by saying this. I have come to learn just what champions of low-income people, both Kathryn and Amanda are, and we've been lucky enough to be able to learn from them tonight. The thing is this, is that they have been running a very effective campaign for 6 years on the smell of an oily rag. They need supporters. They brought the situation to the point where the biggest opposition party is now paying attention to what they say and their knowledge about the destruction of the lives of low-income families. So I'd like you to put your hands together in this virtual manner to say thank you very much to these champions of the struggles on behalf of low-income workers, and to say thank you to all of you for joining in, and good night for now.